Towns around the North Shore continued a hallowed tradition of grassroots democracy, with holding town meetings that began last Saturday on March 4th.
There's two issues in Manchester. One is housing is 140% more expensive in Manchester than the rest of the country on average. 140%. I mean, that's not like, this much. That's a huge number. And as a result, actually, we don't have one police officer that lives in Manchester. And that's something that's a real challenge. We have very few town employees that actually live in town because of that issue, because housing costs are so expensive. When you look at the overall number of the cost of living in Manchester, it's about 115% of the national average. And wages are a little bit less than the national average. So those two things add up to a really bad cocktail, I think, of making Manchester affordable.
About 150 residents converged on the Manchester Elementary School Saturday, March 4th, for the town portion of Manchester's town meeting. Voters approved a $5.5 million in spending on the town's operating and capital budgets after some discussion. More discussion followed shortly afterwards when an item requesting authorization for spending $160,000 on a 7.6-acre parcel of land adjacent to the town's rec park that is currently owned by the nearby Catholic Church. The parcel of land would be mostly used for parking, but some environmental issues prompted some concerns from voters. Eventually, the measure was approved. Townspeople in attendance also approved all spending on other items, but got into a discussion in other business about the number of empty storefronts, which once again seems to be on the rise, and the lack of affordable housing for younger families, which are making it difficult for many to buy homes or even rent apartments. In Australian ballot voting on Tuesday, March 7th, voters approved a $221,900 funding request from the Manchester Community Library by a 571 to 342 margin. Jan Nolan won the race for an open two-year select board seat, defeating Karen Giriak 472 to 349. Voters also authorized a $3 million bond for a new sewer and water lines along Main Street from downtown Manchester through Manchester Village.
The only other thing I want to touch on tonight, and we had scheduled to have one of the law enforcement officers from the state police here to talk about this, and this is reference to the whole Buck Hill situation and the things that have gone on around town. In a nutshell, there was some discussion of why the town didn't step up and sort of take a lead on that whole discussion. When law enforcement moves into town in an incident like that, it's their ballgame. The town doesn't know any more about what's going on than the average citizen out there on the street. So for us to stand up and start making statements about things, it wouldn't have helped at all. It just adds to the confusion sometimes. So the position of the town was let law enforcement handle it. They still are. It's still a very active, ongoing investigation. People that were going to be here tonight are actually involved, and I don't think it's the same one, but they're out tonight working on another situation, and they couldn't make it here tonight. But the bottom line, and the message they gave me to pass along, is that it's still a hot investigation, and they're still working on it, and that's about all we can do right now.
In Arlington, voters engaged in a lengthy discussion about police patrolling and safety, highlighted by a recent murder of an elderly woman shortly after New Year's Day. The murder had the community on edge for a time and led to a well-attended town forum, and concerns still are far from diminishing. On the school side, the meeting was dominated by a proposal to ask voters to approve a $1.6 million loan to upgrade the infrastructure at both the Fisher Elementary School and the Arlington Memorial High School buildings. Improvements would be made to the school's heating and air conditioning, making also repairs to the high school gym, and other deferred maintenance items. School administrators and directors made a concerted effort to drum up support for the measure, which passed by a 251 to 146 margin. Voters in Arlington also passed both their town and school budgets and returned Todd Gamble to the school board and elected Kevin Smith and Matt Bykowski to seats on the school board.
Shall we appropriate, it's Article 4, appropriate a sum not to exceed $31,000 to improve roadway safety so that the committee can apply for a grant. Will all those in favor of Article 4 as written in the warning, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I'm going to count it. Sorry. I think Article 4 has been approved.
In Sunderland, voters approved all measures on their town warning, including their town budget and also an article during floor voting Monday night, which calls for the town to appropriate $31,000 to supply a 20% matching amount of money for a state grant they hope to obtain from the state's transportation agency that will eventually lead to the construction of a paved shoulder on Sunderland Hill Road, roughly from the town garage to the town hall. The idea is to provide for more pedestrian and biking safety along that stretch of roadway. The measure led to some discussion on the floor meeting Monday night. Later, in Australian ballot voting on Tuesday, voters passed both the town and school budgets and returned Steve Bendix and Richard Timmerman to the Select Board.
Please come for 25 hours dedicated to Londonderry every week, and that's what we're paying for. I hear Bill's point, oh, there you go, Bill. Loud and clear, anytime you're paying for anything, you want to make sure it's making a difference, and $86,000 is a lot of money. I'm not sure about Bill's stats because I haven't seen those. But every week, what the police do is reported and is posted on the town website.
I had
Oh, I'm sorry, do you have a follow-up?
Yes,
for
I
me?
do, because
Sure.
I just had an experience with the state police.
Yeah,
And this last Wednesday night, it was around, my husband says it was 1 in the morning, but I said it was like more like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. And we heard probably 200 rounds of ammunition going off, okay? So, and I called the state police, and they told me it was probably a poacher. Now, I don't think hearing 200 shots of a gun going off is a poacher.
the state police come to your home?
No.
Did you call them and ask them to come to your home?
Not that night, no,
Okay.
No.
Did you call them, when you called the state police, did you ask them to come to your home?
no. But I did tell them what happened, and that's when they said to me, sounds to me like you have a poacher.
Horrible shot.
Right. So is your concern that the state police were not responsive?
That's right.
Well, that's one of the issues. So Bill was talking about how we pay for state police protection. We're supposed to get it. But the amount of area they have to cover, I'm sorry. I'll let anyone speak, but I'm just going to say what I know. The amount of area they have to cover with a few police officers is incredible.
Over in Londonderry, in a throwback-style town meeting on Tuesday, about 200 voters in Londonderry jammed into their town hall to elect 3 select board members by Australian ballot off the floor. Georgianne Mora was elected to a 2-year seat, Jim Amidon to a 3-year seat, and Thomas Cavanaugh was elected to fill the remaining 1 year on another 3-year term on the select board. The article which generated the most interest was one which asked voters if they wished to continue with an arrangement with the Vermont State Police for 25 hours of dedicated patrolling per week. This was an agreement entered into last year, and following a 6-month trial period, voters approved spending $86,000 for a year of patrolling, in addition to the coverage the state police is already providing. But opinion was divided over the cost and the value the additional patrolling would provide, leading to a prolonged discussion, with some arguing the extra patrolling had reduced crime, with others saying it wasn't a good use of taxpayers' dollars. Eventually, the measure passed on a voice vote by a clear margin. After breaking for lunch, townspeople then returned and in the afternoon approved another proposal to construct a new town salt shed for an amount not to exceed $200,000.
One of 5 voters in my house. Not one of us got this. Just my opinion, but I would question whether this is even legal.
We contacted the town clerk's office, and a mailing was sent out to every person that also received the town report, correct?
No, we didn't get it. I didn't get one.
I'm just telling you what we,
Yeah,
you know.
well, I'm just telling you it's not legal because the voters didn't get them.
And we did post it, and we met the legal requirements of posting. and the-
Doesn't it have to be posted in the paper?
We did all of that.
No, how
But
things
they
have to be
did
warned.
warn it correctly. They got it in the papers. I didn't get a letter either, but if you say to somebody, we sent out a whole box of letters to the mailing list, took them to the place, dropped them in, and they were supposed to deliver them. Now the mail service doesn't get it in your box. Is that their fault?
How many people received the special mail flyer in the mail in the last, week or two? How many? Okay, all right, weeks, I don't care. How many weeks? So we've got a quarter of the people here that are raising their hands. So something went wrong there. Do we move on or do we stop? What do you want to do?
I'd like to renew the motion I made. I don't think it got a second, but it seems like we're back at the beginning. I'd just like to make a motion to amend the warning that we're going to vote on to the corrected warning that most people now have in their hands. And then we can go forward.
In Winhall, voters engaged in a lively discussion about their school tax rate and the proposed tuition rate for Burnburton Academy before approving the sought-after rate of $16,700. Voters eventually approved the proposed budget both for the school district, which was not part of the Act 46 Taconic and Green merger, as well as their town budget during floor voting on Tuesday.
If you'll bear with me on that, the elementary student count has been fairly steady over the last 10 years, but this year and last year it's been dipping a little bit. So we have a lower average student rate, but it is lowering a little bit. At the same time, we had a sudden increase in the high school student count. So all of a sudden last year, we had expected maybe 1 or 2 students to come in. We got 16, which was an increase of about 15%. So that you add that in at $15,000, $16,000 a clip, and all of a sudden you realize that's a huge increase that we weren't prepared for. In addition to that, the CLA, the Common Level of Appraisal, I always get this wrong, has gone down, so our tax rate has gone up. So we have to pay more money to cover the same amount of students. So the bottom line is we end up with numbers that look ugly for the average. The average student cost is as high as we've ever had it, and that disturbs me.
In Dorset, voters approved all items on the town warning, including a proposal to shift from 20 hours a week of police patrolling by the Vermont State Police at a cost of $70,000 to a new contract with the Bennington County Sheriff's Department for 40 hours a week of patrolling at a cost of $105,000 a year. There was some discussion at the meeting about why this was needed, but voters eventually passed that measure. Voters also approved eliminating the town lister position and will replace that with an assessor and an administrative assistant position. Most of the discussion was spent reviewing the proposed Taconic and Green merger. For the GNET TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.